Sup people, it's Multiplier here, and what we're doing today is I'm going to show you how to make deep house bass. Now it's really fucking simple once you know how, and I'm going to show you how, so your brain is going to be improved. So in very simple terms, for people who kind of know what they're talking about, I'll very quickly explain it. It's basically FM synthesis, and we have two oscillators. One is modulating another one. The one that's doing the modulating is kind of one harmonic higher than the one that's being modulated. So you have, say, in terms of the ratio, kind of 1 to 2, so half to 1 or 1 to 2 or 2 to 4, whatever else will work. And in terms of the envelopes, the one that's doing the modulating is kind of a really short kind of envelope that looks a bit like that, E here, and then the one that's being modulated looks a bit like F here. And that's pretty much all there is to it. A little bit of pitch envelope action at the front can help, just quite subtly, but that literally is all there is to it. And now you have everything you need to make the sound. But what I'll do is kind of explain all that shit in more detail, because otherwise that made no sense. Right, so what sort of sounds are we talking about? Well, it's that kind of thing that everyone's calling deep house now. That kind of rounded bass is the best way I've heard to describe it. Kind of really warm sort of sound. Yeah, I kind of used it in this thing I was working on today, so I thought I'd show you. Right, here it is. It's not necessarily deep house, this thing, but definitely deep house bass. So yeah. See what I mean about it sounding really sort of like rounded and really sort of warm? It's really nice, especially in the club. You will need some sort of headphones that kind of play proper frequencies, or kind of subs or monitors to really hear what's going on. Otherwise this video won't make much sense at all, because we are talking about bass and not distorted bass. So what is actually going on? So you heard me talking about FM synthesis. It's basically a form of synthesis which is really fundamental. So it doesn't matter what synth you use. I'm using FM8 here, but it could be Ableton's operator. It could be basically any FM synth. And yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty simple as well. So what is going on? So we have a very simple kind of sine wave, first of all. So what I'll do, I'll turn everything off and then turn things on accordingly. So we have just a very simple sine wave that sounds a little bit like this. Now I've given it an envelope that looks a bit like this. Sometimes you might want it to look a bit like that, or whatever it is, just kind of tweak it according to your particular song. There's also no right or wrong length for it. So in this particular case, one of the reasons I chose FM8 is because of this tempo sync button when I'm kind of playing with the envelopes. Just because it means, you see how it's in milliseconds now, and then if I hit tempo sync, the length of the envelope is kind of synced up to the tempo of the track. So I can see that up to here is like an 1/8 long, so I can see based on kind of where my MIDI notes are, kind of how long I want my sound to be, and I can just dial in the envelope accordingly, and it all kind of snaps to the grid. Really nice touch about FM8, and one of the reasons I chose it instead of operator for making this sound. But yeah, fundamentally you can make it in whatever synth you like. They'll all have basic envelope controls like this. So I've got a fundamental sine wave, just doing a very simple kind of ploddy sort of noise like this. The next step would be to kind of play with the pitch envelope a little bit. So if we hop over to pitch, we have this sort of like down envelope. Now, depending on your particular synth you're using, it might look a bit different, but fundamentally you want the pitch going down at the front. And then how much you want it to come down, it's just a case of kind of dialing in the particulars for your particular sound. So I'll kind of play with this here, and you'll hear the effect of the pitch. So So as you can see, you definitely don't want to go too far with it. You'll get that kind of really nice sort of plucky sound from the next stage, so don't go too aggressively with it. You just want a little bit of subtlety to it. It just really gives it a bit of punch and a bit of kind of emphasis at the start of the sound. Because what can happen is with these sounds, if they don't have much emphasis at the start, they really just get kind of lost in the low frequencies, especially when the bass is there. And if you have some sort of cool bass line, you really want it to stand out. So you need the attack part of that sound to really kind of punch and to really just kind of be there. And that's kind of partly what this pitch envelope bit is there for, just so you can, if you have some sort of bass line, you can differentiate the start of each note. Cool, so that's the pitch bit. The next stage is kind of getting another oscillator to modulate the main one we have. So we have a simple sine going on, and then what we want is another one to modulate it, to basically to fuck about with it. So the way that this particular synth works is you have to kind of set up this FM matrix. But fundamentally, all you need to know is you can choose basically how much or how little a particular oscillator is modulating the main oscillator. Another thing to note is we want the ratio to be about 2 to 1, or basically 2 to 1. So I have 0.5 to 1. 1 to 2 would work perfectly fine as well. Don't know why I chose half to 1, it's just kind of habit. But yeah, 1 to 2 is basically what you want. And then for the waveform, it's just kind of choosing it for taste. I found this particular one works quite nicely. And then basically what I'll do is I'll turn on the other modulating oscillator here, and then I'll kind of play around with the settings so you can hear the sort of different sort of vibes you can go for and kind of what each thing is doing. So what I will kind of explain very quickly, if you haven't used the FM8 before, is this number here, 45, basically means that this oscillator E is modulating kind of this oscillator F, and it's doing it like 45% basically, in simple terms. So what I'll do is I'll fuck about with it and you'll hear the effect it's doing. So we'll turn it on. Too much. It's also worth noting what we have for this particular modulating oscillator is a particular envelope. So you see how we have E here is this kind of envelope shape here. And if you look at it in relation to F, so if we have a look at F below it, you can see the sort of relative lengths. So if you get this kind of relative length a bit wrong, you won't really hear much of it. And it also won't sound very plucky unless you have this kind of shape. That's another thing worth considering when you're dialing in the particular sound. You can also see I have 50% of this modulating oscillator coming through to the final signal. All that's doing is bringing in a little bit of kind of like mid bass through. Again, that's just personal preference. You can tweak it according to how you want your sound to be. There's no right or wrongs. But yeah, I'll choose a different wave for E just to give you an idea of different sort of sounds you can come up with. So naturally, as you change the particular waveform of the modulating oscillator, you have to kind of dial in the amount, otherwise it'll sound a bit whack. But that's fundamentally all there is to it. I'll very quickly show you what you would, this video's getting a bit long, what it would look like in operator. Now I won't actually make the sound, but if we drag out operator as an example, the key thing to look at is basically who is modulating who. So you can see if you kind of do some sort of zoom in effect now, we have the green is on top of the yellow. So that basically means the green oscillator, which is B, is modulating yellow. Now if we click this particular bit, we can change the layout to be basically whatever we like, but we need to fundamentally make sure green is above yellow. So we can make this green operator here modulating the yellow one. So in this particular case, what we do is probably bring up the ratio here. So it's 2 to 1, just like we did in FM8. bring up the level a bit. We change the particular envelope to suit. So we'd pull this down, go over to the yellow one, kind of tweak this accordingly. Now we don't have as much envelope control in Operator, so we can't make the same shape. Another reason why I didn't use it, but it's that same idea. And then we've got a bit of pitch envelope action over here. So we click this bit, turn it on. Now we've got a little bit of pitch down, as we can see. And then we just change this percentage, and that will basically give you the same sort of sound. Now, that's the basic idea. Again, you can use any synth you like, but there you have it. It's FM bass, deep house bass. Once you know it's FM, the rest is reasonably simple. It's just a case of dialing it in. Pretty coolness. Yeah, that's it. FM bass, done, dusted, boom, sorted.